Hello viewers. Well, last week I visited Enstone, the home of the Renault F1 team, to have a tour of the factory and learn a bit more about their plans for esports, F1 esports, where they're going, their interaction, and the idea behind the naming convention of working with Team Vitality. And of course, I kicked off with an interview with Mia, who is the Renault Sport Academy Director. Obviously deals more primarily with real motorsport rather than the whole world of racing gaming, but they're certainly all involved as the world of simulation has become ever more important. And so first I caught up with him, learn a bit about his involvement and where Renault see themselves going with the future of esports. Let's see what he had to say. Okay viewers, so now I'm joined by Mia, the Renault Sports Academy Director, to tell us a bit about how F1 esports is integrating into the Renault team. I suppose let's start off. You're a motorsports man. Now we've got gaming and simulation getting involved. Where did it start for you, this integration process?
Look, it all obviously started with motorsports is being really expensive. And obviously the simulation tool is very crucial for development of drivers. Number one is obviously it's a cheaper option. Number two is that obviously weather permits. Therefore, we have a very extensive program in terms of for the real racing drivers, simulation program, simulators. And that is when I believe 2 years ago when, it's a natural process for a Formula One team to have an esport team. Because most of the racing drivers spends half of their time in simulators.
Absolutely. I mean, simulation over the past 15 years or so has grown and grown and grown. I suppose the next thing really is you've taken on the services of Team Vitality. It seemed to me like, in a way, that's like having the manager's name on the shirt. You're a Renault driver. You're not. It's almost like using external capacity. Where did the decision come for you as? From Renault Sports' point of view, of saying, right, we're going to work with a third party rather than integrate that internally?
I think, you have to go with the main players. I mean, who comes. We have to profess to. If you start from scratch, you're not.
You're a car company.
You can't. If you start from scratch, it's not. I wouldn't say it will take a longer time to build up to the level that we all want to. So I think being together with Team Vitality it's a head start, and I think we provide the structure. We provide the structure for developing drivers, finding drivers, and that's and we have the expertise here. Obviously, most of Formula One team have the expertise, but I think it's more about how we adapt from what we are to what it is now.
And this is growing, this is integrating. You're a motorsports man. What would you say is one of the key things you've learned? Because in a way, 10 years ago when I spoke to racing teams, they were very dismissive of this. And I remember talking to an ex-Formula One driver, and he didn't get it. And then one day, it clicked. He wasn't braking at the same pace as he would normally brake. And suddenly he realised, I see how to drive it. Because he didn't feel it, he didn't understand it. And then when he understood that gamers are more visual, it changed everything for him. And I suppose for you, you've seen it on all sides. And what would you say is the point where you said, I get this now?
It's all with esport, with simulator, with we call it video game when it was before. But it's all about practice, getting more practice. Look, age group of race drivers is getting younger and younger. We have to live with that. We don't get Formula One drivers who are 34, 38, 40. We don't think it will be 16, 17, 18, 19 when they get to Formula One. And like it or not, somehow or the other they are exposed to some form of video game or simulator when they were young. You can always say before that it was I went karting when I at the age of 7 or I went karting at the age of 6. Nowadays it's about I did a racing simulator somewhere at the age of 5 or 6 before I went karting. And some of them still have a simulator tool at home while still doing Formula One.
Yeah.
So that shows how important the role of whether you call it high-end video game or simulator for to prepare for a Formula One level.
I suppose final question then on that is, how do you see this being integrated into Renault Sport? Do you think you'll have your own championships? Can you look that far ahead, or is it just a case of one thing at a time, let's develop what we've got?
Well, I think Renault has a platform of junior single-seater.
Yeah.
And I think we have had Formula Renault for the last 45 years with drivers who are at 16 years old. I think to go beyond that, who knows? Possibly. Obviously, it also have to gel with what Renault believes it is at the end of the day. It's for its car market, who are the first buyer of a Renault car. So, and I think from the racing aspect, yes, we have had Formula Renault for the last 45 years. Whether we will have a similar Esport Formula Renault Junior, you never know, but there is a platform in a real life for Renault,
Yeah.
for youngsters, for teenagers, and who may know it could be using a similar platform.
Well, this brings me on to actually another final point. Actually, is we're opening the door. You have to be affluent to be in Formula One. You need funding, you need sponsorship.
Exactly.
You're forever. Now we're opening the door to incredibly talented kids out there who would never get near a racetrack, probably physically not in the right condition to go on a racetrack, but they have the talent, natural talent. That must be exciting now to discover that.
It's a cheap way to discover.
Yeah.
However, it is something. Yes, I've been asked this question a lot. Is it another way for us to talent scout? Yes, it is to a certain extent, because at the end of the day, from a simulator, from a video game, you look at hand and eye coordination. When you look at temperament, you look at. However, yes, the next step is there. However, the next step costs money, and that is sometimes the stumbling block, and sometimes it's for us to work. We will pursue. I'm not saying that we will not pursue drivers who e-sport drivers who does well, and then to make that transition to real racing is something I think every one of us, I wouldn't say the holy grail, but we never know.
I think that's it. Well, listen, finally I'll finish off by saying, it's been interesting to see, like I say, Formula One will always be, you need some backing, you need some sponsorship to get all the way to top flight motorsport. But it's great if the talent can raise someone up somewhere, and perhaps if there's someone out there with the funds to put some behind one of these exciting players, that'll be great. Listen, Mia, thank you very much for your time. So great to hear from Mia there. Certainly always interesting to hear from somebody with both sides. He has a lot of experience, predominantly on the motor racing side. I think ordinarily I would love to have had a lot of extra time to have really gone into the motorsport angle of Renault Sport in that way, but it's great to hear how they're sort of integrating and of course adapting, if anything, their racing drivers into simulation drivers, more so even than bringing sim racers up. But they've got a mix of both and cut it together, and I think it's very much a learning process. I guess the next opportunity for me then was to speak to one of the racing drivers, again, ex-racing driver and of course F1 Esports driver, doing very well at the moment, Jarno Opmeer. Let's see what he had to say. Okay, viewers, so now I'm joined by Jarno Opmeer for Renault Team Vitality Racing. Wow, it's been amazing just being here at the Formula One factory today, seeing it all. But first I'd like to find out, how did you get into, where did your racing start? Because you've done real racing as well. Where did it all start for you?
For me, it all started when I was around 4 years old. I started go-karting on a little track in Holland called Strijen. And then my dad put in a lot of hours for karting, and always went with me to the track, took me with me to the track. And we practiced pretty much every weekend day possible. Then I became Dutch champion karting in 2009, 2010 and 2011.
So you kind of crossed paths with Rudy van Buren.
Yes, he says he does remember me at this track driving, but I was such a young age that I don't remember it. So yeah, I know Rudy a little bit. Obviously an amazing
competitive. So you've had some karting experience. You've got into sim racing and gaming. What sort of games got you into it? Where did you say, you know what?
From a very young age, I was already, probably before I was even karting, I think 3 years old, I was playing Formula 1 games. Simply because Formula 1 is the fastest car, so I always really like to drive that. So yeah, from, I would say 3 years old until always, even when I done real life racing Formula cars, I always did play the F1 games simply because I really liked it.
So you've had the karting experience, you got into racing, you got into sim racing online leagues, and then you thought, I'm going to have a go at the F1 Esports. How did that go?
So yeah, in 2017 I did Formula Renault Euro Cup, and then for 2018 I dropped out of the Renault Academy, so I had to stop racing. So then obviously I was still playing Formula 1, and then I started to get more and more competitive, and then signed up for leagues to kind of roll into F1 Esports a little bit. And I still had a lot of connections in Renault. And in 2018 I tried to join in the Renault Vitality squad, but I wasn't good enough yet. Also, the Vitality part didn't really know about me. And then in March I got invited to a tryout here, and I was the fastest, so they chose me after the tryout, and it's been working quite well since then.
What's been a greater influence to you? Race driving affecting your sim racing, or sim racing affecting your race driving? How the two? Have you learned things, got more experience? Perhaps you relax more because you've done more starts, or
yeah, I would
make
say
mistakes in sim racing, see, that you wouldn't make in real life. So
in real life there's always this kind of pressure because literally if you get into the gravel or you crash, you're literally out for the whole day, and it's pretty much over. And on sim racing, I've always done a lot of sim racing as preparation for before testing days or race weekends, just to get to learn the track, try a few different lines and stuff like that. Simply because you don't get as punished as fast as in real life. When in real life you only have a few sets of tires per race weekend or test day, and you want to use them optimal. So there's always been some kind of sim racing, and it's always really competitive between drivers on sim racing. So yeah.
So in a way, this is where the excitement is now. You've always been a racing fan. You've done real racing. You've done sim racing. Now you're racing part of the Renault F1 team, essentially. It's amazing. This is sort of stuff dreams are made of, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. Obviously, from a very young age, I hope like something like F1 Esports would exist, and simply because I was always really competitive, already on the 2012 game, and stuff like that.
So finally, then, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's saying, "I can do this. I want to do this"? What advice would you give them now?
Yeah, just a lot of practice. I think that's the most important thing right now. Practice, learn from others, watch others. Yeah, I think practice is one of the most important things.
Practice,
yeah.
And if you can get into a community, because you learn the small tips and tricks that make you fast.
Exactly.
So, listen, Jarno, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So a big thanks to Jarno for his time. In a way, there was a part of me that wanted to speak at the times with sim racer. I felt that Jarno had a lot of experience, and when he comes to somewhere like Renault, he's not necessarily phased in the same way or as excited in the same way as a pure sim racer would have been ending up at Renault. It's interesting. I mean, he's already a racing driver, very well trained. He's been brought up, all his life, adapting technique, and of course that means he's well trained with the knowledge to be fast, and he's applied that very well. And in that sense, it's a racing driver's already been geared towards it, whereas I think a sim racer hasn't. But either way, it's great to see him doing so well and doing well in this year's Formula 1 Esports, which may or may not be run by the time this video goes live. The final is tomorrow as I record this. But it was good talking to him, and of course my passion obviously is Formula 1. I've always loved Formula 1 all these years, many blogs and videos, and of course it was nice to have a tour of the factory, see behind the scenes, learn a bit about seeing the moulding of the pieces, seeing the building of the 2020 cars. I've never been in an active factory when they were actually making the parts and revealing them for the first time. And I could tell we got some looks there where people weren't too keen with us being there. Normally when you visit a lot of these factories, all the interesting stuff is packed away and they sort of clear it out and there's not many people there. So it was interesting to see a lot more activity in there, seeing how it all works, and having a tour as well of mission control that all these teams have, and hearing how you can actually communicate with the drivers and the pit wall and the pits instantly from your various computer terminals. It's just like being on the pit wall. Amazing technology, as well as seeing the telemetry and how it works on F1 2019 and projections going forward as well. So very interesting to see how they're working with their drivers. I've put a feature onto the website in terms of some feelings on the team vitality relationship. I think it's interesting. I think it's unusual. I don't think it works in the scheme of things, in terms of I feel that you should be a Renault F1 esports driver. That's it, you're a Renault driver. It's strange that they've got team vitality on the shirts. It's strange to me that they're promoting a separate entity in that way. That's like promoting Daniel Ricciardo's manager on his shirt. It seems a bit strange. If you're part of Renault, you're part of Renault. So I don't fully understand why a multi-billion pound car company is promoting an esport team in that way, a separate esport organisation. I found that a little bit confusing, because I think if I was becoming a Mercedes driver or a Ferrari driver, I'd want to be Mercedes or Ferrari, or I'd want to be part of the Ferrari Academy or Mercedes Academy or Renault Academy. Being part of separate Renault esport gaming team, it sort of separates you entirely. That's something I'm not so keen on. I've put some words about that on the website. It certainly seems unusual. I was going to ask the marketing director a bit more about this, but unfortunately wasn't able to take our questions, which is a bit of a shame, because I was quite interested to learn how all of this ties together. But either way, F1 this year, obviously Renault underperformed on the whole this year, it has to be said. They haven't hit the targets they wanted to hit. Originally in 2016, they were talking about the power unit being in the right place. Podiums this year hasn't happened for them. Maybe 2020 they can finally get to that point. They've got a lot in place, they've got a lot of investment, they have got a decent power unit now, and I think hopefully next year they can make that step at least to getting thirds. I mean, it's getting that podium, that opportunity of a podium is really important for them. But, dare I say it, 5th place in the championship this year, it does all still seem a long way off, though reliability and of course points taken away could all turn that around. 4th has to be the minimum expectation of Renault next year as a works team. We'll see how that all comes together. But it was interesting to visit the factory. Always a privilege, always a pleasure. Always love the atmosphere of being closer to Formula One. And very exciting for these esport drivers to be a part of something bigger, to mix with the real drivers, to train with the real drivers, and just to see how it all grows. And as I say, where esports is concerned, it's another step forward, but we've still got a long way to go in the whole structure of esports as it stands. But that's it from me for now. As ever, more soon. Thanks for watching today, viewers. I hope you enjoyed the video, and do like and subscribe. It supports what we do. You can go to the website directly above me here, or check out a couple of other videos on the channel. Perhaps things you're interested in terms of racing games, whether it be new or retro, it's all there. Check them out.